Hello everyone and welcome to tonight's live, which is all about body protection. This is part of our Summer of Safety series, talking about how you can improve your safety and the safety of your horse. I'm delighted to be joined by Carmen Cummiskey. Carmen set up FOMO, we were just talking, 10 years ago. I can't believe that. And you launched FOMO, your brand of body protector, to the beta standard 5 years ago. Thank you very much for joining me. You are you are our youngest body protector designer. So what drew you to setting up FOMO and wanting to launch a body protector?
So FOMO actually started as my bachelor's year student project. I was studying sports engineering at the University of Strathclyde, and it was a little bit of a brainchild from the fact that my horse at the time didn't like the noise of air jackets going off, and I never really had the best relationship myself with body protectors. So it really started from there, and it sort of grew arms and legs. I entered a national competition for sports innovation, and then next thing you know, I'm diving into the deep end, setting up my own business sort of at the age of 21. I was by the time I left university. And I think as well for me, a really interesting part of it, which perhaps sort of sets our business apart, is we delved a layer deeper into the materials innovation side. So that's a kind of other aspect to our business where we actually work with chemists on the actual raw material, the foam that goes into body protectors. So that's a little bit about how it all started and why.
And it's interesting because actually the body protector standard, when you talk to the test houses, they always say it is probably the most complicated standard that they test to. So you didn't pick an easy one at all. So what, from a designer's perspective, what are some of the things that you had to consider when you were creating and designing your body protector?
Yeah, so we've just sort of alluded to the safety of the product. So for me, the material choice and the impact protection of any safety product, because that is the point in the product, it is to absorb some of the impact of the fall in order to reduce the risk of injury. So within that, you have the impact protection in terms of safety. You've got the area coverage, which is what our standard is actually very good at in terms of trying to get key areas such as like the rib cage, a certain length of the back, to try and help dissipate, sort of spread the energy across those key areas and limit any kind of incidence of injury. So that's what is covered under area coverage. And then you also have the fit, which does tie to safety, because a good safety garment is a well-fitted garment. So that's the sort of things that you're looking at. And of course, it has to be comfortable, because otherwise people aren't going to wear that. So within the comfort, you've got the feel, which could tie to the foam, but it could also tie to the textiles materials, because you're trying to make something that's really durable and impact resistant and all these things. But it also has to feel comfortable on the body. And even for textiles materials, you could put like a really sort of durable, strong polyester, which might go to some of the things we might talk about later, that perhaps years ago would always kind of cover body protectors. But actually, is that the most comfortable thing, like close to the skin or on top of a base layer? I think material innovation has sort of moved on from that. So your material selection definitely ties into the comfort side, both in terms of the foam and the textiles. And then you've got the difficult part as well, which again ties to fit, and it's what we would deem in like design and engineering as like your ergonomics, which means like the actual fit and sizing, and trying to design to the human body. And we're all different shapes and sizes. Even someone who is, say, a lady's 10 and is like a regular back length, you could have someone who is that and 5'8" and have someone who's that and 5'1". So within that, your volumetrics inside of this garment, a 3D garment, it can be quite varying. So that is a challenge within itself as a designer and something you need to think about.
Yeah, and there are so many aspects to it, and I think what you say about fit is so relevant, because how often have we heard people talking about body protectors saying, "Oh, they're really uncomfortable," and I always say, no, an uncomfortable garment is likely to be a garment that just doesn't fit you right. And it's changing that perspective. And I think a lot of people that have this view of body protectors probably last had one on 20 years ago or 15 years ago and haven't, because things have changed. Materials changed, the way we put them together changed. So where have you seen innovation go in terms of those materials and the way the garments are put together? Because your garment is very innovative, and we're seeing more and more innovations in that attempt to make things better, but we are limited by the material. We could talk about the material, but yeah.
So I think there's been a lot more thought into the foams, as we've mentioned. Particularly I've sort of mentioned that we do that additional sort of layer of things, and we do look at the materials innovations, but sports foams in general, if you like, have came a long way. There's sort of different combinations of stuff being used, and there is sort of more sort of tweaks and variations in terms of the density of the foam and how that feels. I think a lot of that has probably to do with the chemistry and production processes getting better on the layer sort of behind that. And again, to do with innovations in material and production processes, your actual garments and textile innovations have came a long way. There's nice like soft shell fabrics, for example, that actually are really like durable and have a level of breathability, but you're moving away from that sort of thicker kind of polyester cover that you might have had maybe 20 years ago on body protectors. And that also ties into like how things look and how things can look a bit more sort of sporty and things like that as well. So yeah, I think that's some of the ways that things have moved forward. And again, behind that, even in terms of how we impact test and how we assess, we sort of assess how effective things are. I think, something that Claire, you and I have talked about is like some of the research that we've looked at, where it actually took some things that were done in the automotive industry, having had a little bit of experience there, and kind of were able to simulate, more kind of realistic impacts in terms of how people might fall, because that's a really difficult thing to actually test and analyse. There's so many different aspects to that, especially in our sport, because you've got us, which are a live moving thing of different sizes, shapes, etc. And then you also have horses involved, and you have different terrain, different fence types. So I think that technology in general is moving on all the time, and that has led to better design.
Yeah, and exactly what you're saying, the mechanics of fall, what type of falls, how they happen. There's a lot being done on in the hat industry on that, looking into research of rider falls and how hats work, but we haven't really done lots on the body protector sides. And so people have this funny view of how body protectors work and what makes them work. So have you seen any misconceptions about body protectors and how they work effectively?
Yeah, I mean, something that I've definitely found is that people just sometimes don't think they work at all. But of course, like, we know the amount of testing that goes into it, and I try and sort of relay it to them, like a kind of value I use that I know that we need to be under. The kind of baseline force for that is what would break your femur bone. So if we're reducing things by that much, that's like that's sort of the difference that we're potentially making to any sort of impacts that are happening there. A misconception as well, I have to say, that I found recently is that a misunderstanding about the different types of products that are out there. I think that an ear jacket works differently from a body protector, and a back protector, yet again, works very different to, say, something that is a level 3 body protector. And it's trying to sort of explain that to people, because sometimes I think because something's on the shelf, and it is that idea perhaps with like back protect panels in particular that something's better than nothing, and absolutely, but that they're the exact same as a body protector, and that's just not the case. The testing's quite different that's involved in that, and the impacts are quite different. So it's just trying to sort of educate people that, you know, actually things are this way for a reason, in order to do the job that you want it to do.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because when they first started in the 1980s, they were back protectors. And then we moved, if people realised that actually you can't always guarantee that you're going to land on your back or that a horse is going to kick you on your back. So we needed more coverage. So that's where we came to body protectors. So I've spent the last 25 years trying to tell people they're body protectors. And then we had back protectors suddenly on the market. But yeah, you're right. And I think one of the messages we have to try and get out is that a body protector is all about reducing the risk and reducing the severity.
Yeah.
And I think that's why your analogy of the force would help break a bone. That's exactly what it is. I came off 2 months ago on very hard ground because we really hadn't had any rain.
Yeah.
Landed on my back inside, and I was wearing my body protector, got up, I did not have a bruise on me. Not a bruise. And that was, if I hadn't been wearing my body protector, because I rolled over and got on the front, I would have been bruised. So I think it's understanding, yeah, there is some misconception of what it does and what it doesn't do.
Yeah.
And a lot of back protectors they call spine protectors, but actually the spinal column, there's not a lot we can do because the damage that happens to the spinal column is very rotational in nature. So yeah, I think that's a really important one, and yeah, there's the argument of is wearing something better than nothing, depends what you're wearing. Just moving on to, you mentioned the safety standards. I mean, you and I know, but I think it's useful to tell people what they should be looking for. You've already mentioned back protectors. They're tested totally different because there is no standard for equestrian back protectors. There will be an air vest standard soon, but in body protectors, what should people be looking for?
So with your body protector, you are looking for a Beta Level 3 2018 label at the moment, which is a sort of bright blue label. And what that actually means is that has been tested to the European Level 3 standard. And on top of that, we actually have to do an annual retest, which ensures quality control. And that's really important because actually, as you know, anyone who works in manufacturing would know, or sort of knows, you might get batches of things in, and you know there should be a quality control process just to sort of ensure that quality and that standard that you've initially been assessed to continues year on year and batch per batch. So actually, by having the Beta Level 3 2018 label, not only are you adhering to the European standard, but you're ensuring continued quality with that manufacturer. So that is what you're sort of looking for for a body protector in the UK.
And it's interesting. I mean, it's not just UK; it is around the world now because we have. I think they specified Beta Level 3 for the New Zealand Equestrian Federation and the Australian. So they are growing, and we know because we get the results that garments do fail on the annual retest. We had one exactly what you're saying. The batch of foam failed. It was a faulty batch, and that was caught at retest. And then there was another incident on an overseas manufacturer that they had a new factory manager, and he had been told to save money. So he decided to take out a layer of foam. And so we picked it up. So because it is very much tested on impact. So can you just tell us, how do those impact tests work and why are they so important when it comes to body protection?
So there's two different types of impact tests that are done. There is a blunt impact, which simulates, I suppose, when you're hitting a larger area. So that might be the ground, or you know, you're kind of hitting a large area of the body. And then there is a sort of narrow impactor or sharp impactor, and that's to simulate if you were, say, to hit like the edge of a fence or something that's quite like a penetrative sort of force. And that's important because that's the two main types of falls that we have as a standard fall, I suppose, within horse riding. And not only this, the body protectors are tested. There's sort of multiple impacts done across different areas to ensure that, you know, it's not just like a single impact in place and that's it passed. Because, you know, the difference as well with body protectors is that, you know, within reason and standard falls, is there is a level of durability there as well. So, you know, they are sort of rigorously tested within the standard.
Yeah, and the other thing to mention perhaps is that the test laboratories are instructed to look for any weak spots. And so that's why, for example, 2 standards ago, there was no requirement to test the zip. And that's why most or all body protectors to level 3 will have a cover of foam over the zip. And that was because it was identified that actually if you got kicked in the middle of your chest where the zip was, that was a weak spot.
Yeah.
And so that's why we've done that. So that's worth thinking about. When should people think about wearing body protectors? This is a contentious one because
yeah, absolutely.
I know what people do, and I know what I'd like to think people would do, and they're two different things.
You know, and it's such an interesting conversation, isn't it? And realistically, the answer is as often as possible. But you know, and a realistic as well answer is I say to people sort of know your situation and know your horse. Like Claire and I, you know, we were just talking, I don't know if it was before we went live, but you know, we were talking about how sometimes it's just like it's the silliest of things. Like I have quite a young horse, and I was, you know, she was quite sort of a bit more sort of green when I first got her, and it was a bit of a new situation for me. And I was in a lesson last year, and I'll be honest, it was a flat work lesson at home, and I didn't have my body protector on. I know Miss Bo or whatever, you know, probably should, but it just, you know, it was just one of those situations I didn't, and I came off, and still to this day, my back is sore. And after that, you know, I made sure that I was wearing my body protector riding my young horse at the time, you know. So I think it's know your situation, know your horse, and you know, if you're going into a situation, it doesn't need to be cross country. It doesn't even need to be show jumping. It could be you're going to hack, because let's be honest, falling off on concrete, on tarmac, on the road, doesn't matter if you're falling off from a walk. You know, that is a huge force going through your body. So I would just sort of, I think from my own perspective as a rider, and also, you know, I suppose as an engineer and a manufacturer, it's saying, like, analyze your situation, and if there is any kind of way, a what if, wear your body protector.
Yeah, and I think that's our chief medical officer, Di, will always say, don't put yourself in a position where you are going to have to ask a doctor, what if I'd been wearing my body protector? Because that she's had that example, both with body protectors and hats. If it's there and it's in your tack room, if you come off and have a nasty fall, it's no good in the tack room. And I seem to have fallen off more over the last few years than I did before. Not because my horses are young, actually. They're just getting sillier as they get older. I did that coming off on the road, landed on my back. She walked on top of me. She wasn't very nice. She didn't miss me. And her hoof literally landed in the middle of my chest. I was wearing my body protector. Honestly, I wasn't bruised. So, yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it. Really think about your situation. And if there's any likelihood, then put it on, because what's it going to cost you? Nothing. I think a lot of people don't like putting them on if they're in a big yard and they're going out to school, because people say, and even my friends will say, what you got your body protector on for? You know,
it's so interesting. I suppose it's actually one of the reasons that I went in to do what I do, is that, I think it used to be even worse. I think it was like, oh, if you were in a warm-up or something and someone had a body protector on, you were like, whoa, like, you know, stay away from them. They obviously don't know what they're doing. And it's so wrong, isn't it? And actually, what I think is really positive is, you know, I see so many more kids and stuff now, even teenagers, who are riding their body protectors all the time. And I think it is becoming more the norm.
And wearing them on the ground as well, wearing them when you're handling horses.
Yes.
You know, I know a vet. Well, when I lived in Germany, a vet was killed by one of the foals, kicked in the chest. Now, vets don't necessarily always wear them, but you do see. We were at a stud recently, and all of the stud grooms wear hats and body protectors when they're handling the stallions. Mm-hmm. So I think there is a changing attitude. We just need to make it a bit more acceptable. You know, who would have thought that dressage riders at the Olympics would be wearing hats?
Yeah. And it is that change in things, isn't it, over time?
Yeah, very much so. So just looking on to, we talked about fit before and how fit is so important to get people to wear them. What should people look out for when choosing a body protector to get the right size?
Yeah. So I mentioned this earlier, you do want it to be as close contact as possible, but you also definitely want to be able to breathe. So it's, you know, making sure that it's close contact to you, but, you know, you don't want to be halfway around a cross-country course or even out a hack, you know, and you get at a point where you're like, I need to get this thing off. And it's like, you know, how quickly can you get it unzipped and off you? So, yeah, it needs to be close contact. You should be able to breathe. Some other key things to look out for are that you have the rib coverage at the front, and that's really important. It should sort of go past your bottom rib. Don't get me wrong, it shouldn't be too long. It shouldn't be hitting off your hip bones type thing. It should go past your bottom rib, and that's really key for making sure that the product works effectively. Whenever I fit them with people sitting down, if you don't have a saddle to hand, I do tend to hit them with full hand with the space. I think the fitting of the tail is kind of changed a little bit, I would almost say, over the years, just in terms of it's maybe a little bit clear. You might say argue against this, I'm not too sure, but that it used to maybe be like you would kind of go like that. For me personally, especially if people are kind of doing different activities, I would kind of do about a full hand with the space. And for me, in my experience, that's worked quite well in terms of people with different saddle shapes and things like that as well. You also want to make sure it's not sitting away up off your shoulders. It should be kind of close contact there, again, without being uncomfortable. And again, you don't want it sitting away out from under the arms. It should be close contact with still the ability to sort of definitely breathe.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And the reason why we always say a close contact is because a lot of the foams that we use are heat sensitive. And so if your body heat can warm the foam up, then it just makes the foam more pliable and more comfortable. And I think things have changed. You know, now people know about wear as little as possible under the garments, possibly helped by the fact that thanks to climate change, it's a lot warmer. And so you really don't want to have a lot on underneath it. Yeah, I think that's really popular. How can people check maybe that the garment they've got either at home still fits them, or, you know, when they're going in to be fitted? Is there a right or wrong way to check? You mentioned sitting down. I think that's really important.
Yeah, so I'm definitely sit down. You know, sort of, especially if you're at a trade show and you're maybe fitting lots of people, you get quite a lot of people stand up and think, "Well, that's too long," and I'm like, "No, sit down," because as soon as you sit down, it will rise up the back. So yeah, sit down, check the length at the back, make sure that you sort of have that hands width of space. You don't want it too high up, passing sort of the curve of your spine, which is known as your lumbar spine, because that's actually an area where if you were to have a fall on your back, that's an area that's sort of quite sensitive because there's more movement in your spine there. So you definitely want to try and have it, you know, that covered as much as possible. As I mentioned, making sure it's sort of passing the ribs. There are some really good guides online. I know that the Beta has one on your website. Here we go. So if you're unsure, have a wee read of it and check it. And, you know, if you're still unsure or you think, you know, we're sort of on the fence, I would recommend going to a Beta approved safety retailer, and, you know, maybe bringing it with you, and you could maybe speak to the staff in store, and if it's sort of correct to do so, then have a new garment fitted.
Yeah, and I think the way they're designed as well, there's a lot more adjustability now than there used to be. Just particularly with children, how often do you think people, children should be refitted? What's quite common?
You see, this is a question I get asked a lot, and it's how long is a piece of string, because it's how quickly the children grow. And sometimes, they can have a massive growth spurt. And, the key thing I would definitely say is making sure you have that rib coverage at the front. If that's starting to go and it's shooting away up the back, I would say it's definitely time to sort of get refitted. And the same as well, if they're finding it really constrictive and tight, again, it's probably time then to move up a size. Claire, as you've mentioned, a lot of the body protectors do have good adjustability. So also look whether, it is an adjuster, like on FOMO's products, or some products have lacing, some products have Velcro. So just sort of check, see if there's a little bit more adjustment there. Something to look out for is that on some garments where there's adjustment, you'll have like a bright coloured safety tab, which you don't want to go past. So just if you're then kind of getting to the point where you're needing that or past that sort of bright coloured tab, which marks where you should have covered, then I would say it's time to definitely get refitted.
Yeah, exactly. So it's usually red, and if you adjust, say, shoulders, some have shoulder adjustments. If you adjust it on the shoulder and you can suddenly see that red, then it's telling you it's not offering you the coverage you need. Yeah, and I think also just think about, not just for children but adults, when you change shape. If you are perhaps have a bit too much condition on, when you buy a garment and then you lose weight or vice versa, the fit will change. And you are all different shapes. I'm actually a very difficult fit because of my body shape. I've got very long ribs and a very small gap between my hip bone and my rib cage. And so I've been told by numerous manufacturers I'm really difficult, which is really good for trying different models on. But I have to have one that's custom made. And there is some manufacturers that will do custom made, so it's worth looking around. Just about care and cleaning. I mean, we don't quite get it as bad as hats where people put them in the dishwasher. Yes, they really do. How should you, first of all, when you've got one, how should you store your body protector to ensure it keeps working and does the job it should be doing?
So you want to store your body protector in a dry environment where there isn't lots of massive heat changes. So, ideally not in your car, especially over the summer that we've had, because that will actually change the key impact resistant materials like your foams over time. Okay, so you don't want to be doing that. You want to also be either storing it hanging up, or you want to maybe like lie it flat as well, but make sure you're not then piling your grooming box and everything on top of it. You don't want moisture, anything that's going to potentially affect, like your foams and stuff like that over time. You don't want any of that, because that's going to actually impact on your impact resistance within the product. So that's the reason that you have all that on your care booklet. So yeah, hanging or lie flat, not with your grooming box on top. And yeah, make sure you're storing it, ideally maybe like in your house or something where it's not going to get damp or frozen or melted with the British we've had this year.
Yeah, and the other thing is, especially in winter, keeping it in a cold, because let's face it, most tech rooms are cold. In a cold tech room means that when you go to put it on, it's stiff. I mean, they are. So yeah, keeping them in a ambient temperature is absolutely agreed. Yeah, is the best. What's your stance on cleaning? How should body protectors be cleaned? Because that's closed cell foam in effect, isn't it?
Yes, you don't want to be sticking it in the dishwasher or the full thing in the washing machine, no matter what the brand. Yeah, I would always check. Different brands have different guidelines. For example, with our range of products, the outer soft shell cover is removable, which you can wash. I think there's some other brands that maybe have something a little bit similar. However, some brands where you can't remove anything, then you can probably give it a quick wipe down. If you're unsure, check on the brand or the manufacturer's website. Don't do anything like putting the full thing in the washing machine. Just double check. I'm sure any of the brands would be happy to help.
Yeah, and I don't know about most people, but I don't really clean mine very often, which sounds disgusting. I don't think many of us do, but it's good practice. And if you've got a removable cover, then you have no excuses. And this is a really tricky one, because with hats, we say if you have a severe fall, you need to replace it. Body protectors typically aren't quite as sensitive. So what's the guidance you give on when it should be replaced, and are there any signs that tell you it should be replaced?
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of timeline, if you have a sort of normal use body protector, every 3 to 5 years you should look to replace your body protector. The sort of typical guidelines there. In terms of if you have had a serious fall, replace all your safety equipment, absolutely. A typical impact, your body protector is able to withstand that. We've mentioned some of the testing that's been done. I know certainly in-house ourselves, we do multiple impacts as well on the same sort of spot. So that's fine. Things to look out for are any kind of bumps or ridges or kind of misalignment, I suppose, of the foam, where it looks potentially like it's been a bit damaged. I would suggest, if that's occurred, knowing how these materials are, it's probably time to replace your body protector.
Yeah, and that's our guidance. If you have a bad fall and you notice that it's dented, then think maybe it's when you should, because it's memory foam. So quite often it will have an impact, it will be dented, and then you look at it the next day and it won't be.
Yeah.
So it's always good to inspect. Yeah, I think. What would you say is, just to finish, what are your if I said, what are the 3 main points that you would want people to think about when they're looking either to buy or replace or even consider wearing a body protector? What are your 3 top guides?
My 3 are: do your research. There might be a brand that really suits your friend, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the best brand or fit for you. Which leads me on to my second point, is that make sure it's fitted well. That makes all the world of difference in terms of how these products work. And number 3 would probably be, see, that's quite a good first 2, isn't it?
Really good first 2.
So do your research, fit. And the other thing I would say is try and, again, pick something that's also suitable for what it is that you're trying to do, actually. So you want to make sure that it fits in with your discipline or your general riding, and that could also tie into fit as well. Mentioned in terms of fitting in different saddles and things like that. And also just body shape. So make sure, I suppose, it's the right sort of pick and choice from you, and you can sort of do your research behind that, because what we want is for people to buy safety wear that they're going to wear.
Yeah,
going to sit in the back of the cupboard.
Yeah, I think your first point's a really, really good one, is that just because your best friend wears X brand doesn't mean it's going to be right for you. And the other thing is, and it doesn't really happen so much in body protectors, it does in the world of hats, expensive doesn't always mean best. If it meets a level 3, it will meet a level 3. If it's 3 times the cost of another garment, then the difference may be design or fit or simplicity of manufacture. So don't just always look at the price, look at the garment. But yeah. Carmen, thank you so much. It's really interesting to speak to somebody who's really been involved in a garment from the very start in the concept, because I think you have an understanding that others just don't have. So thank you so much for coming on tonight. It's been really lovely talking to you.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.